When it comes to film stocks, are you after something popular or after a unique experience? Arguably, Kodak Portra 400 can be named one of the most talked about and used film stocks, but maybe it's for good reason. When it comes to characteristics, Portra 400, a daylight balanced color negative film, is known for its consistent results. Whether those results come in the form of accurate skin tone rendering, its low contrast, or better yet, its exceptional color saturation in a variety of lighting conditions. Is Portra 400 a stock you rely on? Do you see it as a choice for a wide range of genres within photography? Would you say it fares well for portraits, fashion, street travel, maybe even landscape? What film do you reach for when it's time to load up? Do you go for something that can maybe offer you a unique physical experience? Does slide film come to mind? Maybe Ektachrome 100 could be a portrait alternative for you. Ektachrome provides extremely fine grain, bright whites, and enhanced color saturation with a neutral balance and low contrast, designed for daylight or flash use. Luckily for me, I use both, although my experience with Ektachrome 100 has been limited to just 3 or 4 rolls. I want to say a couple rolls of 120 and just 1 roll of 35mm. But every time that I've gotten out to use it, it's always been an enjoyable time. And when it comes to Portra 400, it is a stock that I rely on heavily and one that I'm always reaching for every time that I go to shoot. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Hope you all are doing well today. We're going to be taking a deeper look at some film stocks and doing some comparison between Portra 400 and Ektachrome 100. Now, previous to this video, maybe you have seen the portrait tips video, so these photos will look familiar, or you've seen the deeper dive into scanning at home with Ektachrome 100. I wanted to continue to build on the series, take a deeper look, and give you guys some thoughts on these two different film stocks because I use them both on the same day in very similar lighting conditions. I wanted to take a deeper dive and really compare the lab scans of these photos, compare my end results of the edits that I've done on the film, and talk about the use cases that I would use these particular film stocks. You know, Portra 400 is a film stock that I reach for quite often, and it's one that I use a lot, time and time again, and it's something that's been reliable for me. And Ektachrome is kind of a special use case, I think, so we're gonna dive in deep today, jump into the computer, put them side by side, hop in Lightroom and talk through the results, give you guys a little bit of detail, and just peel back the layers of what these film stocks really consist of. And full disclaimer as well, these photos are from a lab that I consistently use and trust on a regular, so I think we'll be looking at some quality today for sure. But before we jump in, I just wanted to take this time to say thank you. Thank you to everyone that went out and just took a look at the post that I threw up on Instagram. Posted a couple of shots up from the location that we shot at. The first video, the portrait tip video, I really enjoyed those photos. You know, even though I was out giving a tutorial, making those photos was a fun time, and the location was everything. The colors were everything. I think it made for a nice time. So if you're in Seattle and want to check out this location, we'll leave a link down in the description for you. You can check this spot out on Peerspace. It's available to rent. It's fairly cheap too. Amazing location, the host and everything there. Awesome, really good people. The colored walls on point. It doesn't need too much explaining, but we're going to take a look at the photos too as well, and you'll be able to see a little bit more of the location, see a little bit more of the colors, especially how it compares to the film stocks. So definitely go and check it out if you're in Seattle and looking for a space to rent for sure. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into Lightroom now. I've got everything pulled up, the scans, the edits, the whole 9 yards. Okay, so we're going to jump into comparing the baseline, comparing the scans I got from the lab. Again, I do want to reiterate that the Ektachrome 100 was shot at box speed. It was meter at box speed for the highlights, and the Portra was shot at ISO 200, overexposing the film, mainly metering for the highlights unless I'm shooting from the shadow side where the whole face is in shadow, but always just trying to prioritize the skin tone when it comes to metering for the film. So as we take a look at these two shots here, taking a look at the portrait just looks a lot flatter to me. If we take a look at the skin tone, it doesn't seem like there's a lot more life and pop into it. This is that low contrast that I talked to you guys about in the beginning. Even if we looked at the color walls, like looking at the green and the yellow, those two colors there, since this is a similar composition, I think the portrait is a lot more flat. It seems like it's more of a palette that you can work up from. But as far as detail in the shadows, I do think Portra has a little bit more latitude there for sure compared to the Ektachrome scan. But again, both of these scans are done with preserving the highlights. Once we get into comparing the edits, then we'll be able to see a little bit more accurate detail. So jumping out now into a more wider shot, looking at the scans here compared to shadow detail, just because of how it's being shot and what the lab is scanning for, I think there are clear differences. I think in this shot here, I can see that the portrait is overexposed, but I think these are both workable images. Again, looking at the portrait, I can just tell that it's a lower contrast. I can see that Ektachrome has a little bit more pop, even just with the scans being prioritized for the highlights. Looking at the portrait, it seems to have more grain. And this is actually a very interesting thing to think about, because I shoot so much portrait, and to be honest, like when it comes to shooting medium format, when it comes to shooting 120, you don't notice grain as much as you do when it comes to shooting 35mm. So let's hop into these last two images that we'll look at for the scans. And then what I've done is just try to get similar compositions and similar lighting positions when it comes to the comparison, because the light did change on the day. But just looking at these two images right off the back, I can see the grain. And I remember when I first started shooting medium format, when I first started shooting 120, I felt like at times I couldn't see the grain. But now, shooting different film stocks over the years, I can really tell the characteristics of portrait. And even though I've shot Ektachrome 100 on a limited basis, putting these two side by side, I can see the differences. I can see that they're different film stocks for sure. With the Ektachrome, it's just more of a finer grain. It's just more of a finer grain compared to portrait. It might be a little bit hard to see on the screen, but honestly, just looking at them here, I ain't gonna lie to you that it's just like a lot smoother. It's a lot finer. And I think the contrast levels is more flat in the portrait, but because of how I meter it, they almost look similar. They almost look on the similar baseline, but that might be just because of how the lab is scanning it too as well. So results may vary depending on what lab you use. Okay, so let's start back from the top, taking a look at the first images that we looked at just from the lab scans, the first comparison. Now these photos that we're taking a look at, I've done some edits on, I've done some processing on, and I think this is more of a baseline level when it comes to accuracy, in terms of really being able to see what the photo can give us, really being able to see where you can work from the scan. Because for me, in my process, the scan is just a step when it comes to creating my look for my shots that I do. So taking a look at this, it's even easier for me to compare. You know, I've brought the shadows up. Again, with the portrait, there's more grain. With the Ektachrome, it looks more fine. Now, when it comes to the shadows on the Ektachrome, I do see that it can be a little bit more muddy compared to the portrait, just because of how we metered it. I think there's more details with the portrait. But looking at both of these shots, the shot on the right, the Ektachrome 100, is what I'm going for. Again, portrait 400 on the left, Ektachrome 100 on the right here. Looking at these ones, I can see that Ektachrome just has a little bit more pop. It just looks a little bit more smoother. It looks a little bit more fine in terms of grain. Both usable images, but Ektachrome 100 for sure. Okay, so portrait 400 on the left, Ektachrome 100 on the right. Looking at these two, to be honest, I like the shot on the right. I think on the day, Ektachrome really came out strong for me. Now, when it comes to tint, it seems that the Ektachrome just has like a little bit more of a greenish tint to it. A lot of that tint could have a lot to do with a lot of the light bouncing everywhere on location. Just to Kirsten's left shoulder, there's like this white kind of shelter or cover that has a bunch of different colors on. So I think some of the light might have been reflecting off of that. So that could kind of play along with the tint too as well. But just looking at this images, you know, Ektachrome 100 is still something that's usable, to be honest, even in a condition where the contrast can vary a lot. Both good images, I think, both usable, but the winner for me is Ektachrome 100. Okay, so portrait on the left, Ektachrome on the right. Again, I can visibly see that the Ektachrome is just smoother. The grain is smoother. It just looks really neat to me. I feel like Ektachrome really fits this environment. The colors and everything are just popping. I feel like Ektachrome just fits the environment, even though I'm a portrait 400 shooter through and through. Looking at both these images, that's kind of the conclusion that I'm come up with. I mean, as far as like highlight detail, there's definitely more when it comes to portrait. here. I think it looks a little bit cleaner, but honestly they're both great. So looking at them side by side just gives me that feel of, you know, what the environment is really capable of in terms of what film stock that I'm using. So looking at these two film stocks side by side, even though I am feeling a lot of the Ektachrome shots way more on this day and in this environment, I think Ektachrome is something that I would go for on a special use case when I just want to have a little bit of fun, just want to experiment, test, just see something new to change things up, because I do shoot portrait a lot. On this day I wanted to change things up. It was a lower speed film, a bit slower than Portra 400. I could get down to a bigger aperture, say at f5.6, f4 even, just depending. And on the day that was something that really intrigued me. I love seeing the color positives on a light table. Maybe one day I can have the slides and project them, but overall just Ektachrome 100 can be that good change of pace. I don't think it's necessarily something that I would reach for like I would with Portra 400 for my professional work. You know, when it comes to Portra 400, I think a lot of people would say that it's reliable, and that's something for me that's been tried and true time and time again. It's reliable, consistent. The flexibility of the film is one that I can trust. I know that I can overexpose it, I know I can underexpose it, I know the results that I'm gonna get, and Portra is a really nice palette to play from. You know, sometimes the film seems automatic because you know what you're gonna get. It just delivers results time and time again, and it just gives you a palette I think that has a lot of latitude. But when it comes to my professional work, again, it's gonna be my choice of film a lot because it's one that I can depend on. The cost factoring in these film stocks can have you lean one way or another. You know, Portra 400 comes in at around $10 for a roll of 120, $13 for a roll of 35mm. Ektachrome 100 comes in about $12 for 120 and $17 for 35mm. And the 35mm to me is a bit steep, so I don't know if I would reach for that all the time. Maybe that's the only reason I've only shot one roll of it, but I think it's special use case. You know, how much does the cost affect your ability to reach for it, ability to use it? You know, is that something that's going to be a determining factor for you shooting each film? I think for me personally, like I've been saying, it's a special use case. Maybe one day I just want to change it up. We'll go for Ektachrome. It might be a nice sunny day for Ektachrome, but I know professionally Portra 400 is going to be something that I can rely on. I like both film stocks. I think sometimes just changing up the film stocks that you're using can just be something that can just add that spice of life to your photography and everything that you're shooting, for sure. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. Really appreciate the support you guys have been giving to the Pure Space channel and the videos that we've been creating. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. If you're a returning subscriber, if there's some other videos you haven't seen, go and catch up on those. If you want to see more of this Ektachrome in action, you want to see more of the portrait in action, go and check out the videos prior to this one, the portrait tip video, the Ektachrome in-depth video. There's going to be more information just to provide to you, to give you just a bit more insight to learn and, you know, grow together. So don't forget, if you want to check out this location, it'll be linked in the description. Fabulous color walls in Seattle. I can almost guarantee you that any film stock you shoot, whether it's Portra or Ektachrome or whatever, whenever your flavor of film is, your spice of life, it'll look good. So check this location out for sure. It'll be linked in the description. Even if you want to shoot black and white, it'll probably look good too. Who knows? But thank you guys so much. Appreciate you guys. This is it for this one, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Holla.